Hi, it is time for another First Chapter Friday with the Green High School Library. This is October, and I know a lot of librarians are reading or suggesting scary books with monsters and ghosts and other Halloween-y type characters. I thought I would go in a different direction, still scary, but more of a OMG, I'll never be able to sleep again because this might just happen type of scary. So you should be warned, this could cause some sleep deprivation. The book is 1 Second After by William Forstchen, and it involves the character John Matheson, who is a professor in a small college town of Black Mountain, North Carolina. It's a Norman Rockwell kind of village. Little antique shops, little Southerners just walking around. John is a widower with 2 children, Elizabeth, a 16-year-old, and his daughter Jennifer, who is turning 12 in chapter 1. It is her 12th birthday. Jennifer is a type 1 diabetic. Her grandmother from her on her mother's side has come to visit. Her grandfather is in a care home because of Alzheimer's. And John has arranged for some of her friends to come over to celebrate Jennifer's 12th birthday. So we begin. I'm going to read not the whole chapter, just try to make these videos a little shorter, more manageable, but also because my voice is getting kind of gravelly and no one wants to hear that for a long period of time. So starting toward the end of chapter 1. Leaning against the wall, he soaked in the view, the tranquility of the moment, broken only by the distant rumble of traffic on I-40 and the noise inside the house. Ginger and Zach came back from their romp in the field behind the house and flopped down at his feet, panting hard. The scent of lilacs was heavy on the air. If anyone wanted to truly see spring, they should live in these mountains. Down in the valley below, the cherry trees were in full bloom. Several hundred feet higher, here at his home, they were just beginning to blossom, but the lilacs were already blooming. To his right, 10 miles away, the top of Mount Mitchell was actually crowned with a touch of snow. Winter still up there. When lilacs last in the dooryard bloomed, the scent always triggered in his mind Whitman's lament for Lincoln. It reminded John that tonight, the second Tuesday of the month, was Civil War Roundtable night in the basement of the Methodist Church. It'd be another fun round of the usual raucous debate, the other members all needling him as their one and only Yankee whom they could pick on. And then the phone rang. He'd pull it out of his pocket, expecting it to be Elizabeth. There was going to be hell to pay if it was. How could she stand up her kid sister on her birthday to sneak off with that pimple-faced, fast-handed Johnson kid? But the area code was 703, and John recognized the next 3 numbers. The Pentagon. He opened the phone and clicked it on. Hey, Bob. John, how you doing? Where's my goddaughter? He said it doing a halfway decent imitation of Marlon Brando as Don Corleone. Bob Scales, now 3 stars, John's former boss at Carlisle, and a good friend, had stood as Jennifer's godfather, and though Irish Catholic rather than Italian, he took the job seriously. He and his wife Barbara usually came down 3 or 4 times a year. When Mary died, they had taken a couple of weeks off and stayed to help. They never had children, and thus they considered Jennifer and Elizabeth to be their surrogates. Growing up, John said sadly, her grandmother gave her a gold necklace that must have cost $1,000 or more, which counted a hell of a lot more than the beanies and a stack of Pokemon cards still waiting inside. I even got tickets to Disney World for once school lets out that I'll give her a dinner. But I wonder now if it will be the same. You mean when you took her there when she was 6 and Elizabeth 10? Yeah, it'll be different. But you'll still see the little girl come out down there, even with Elizabeth. How's Elizabeth doing, by the way? I'm thinking of shooting her boyfriend later today. Bob roared with laughter. Maybe it's best I didn't have daughters, Bob finally replied. Sons, yeah. His voice trailed off for a moment. Hey, let me speak to Jennifer, okay? Sure. John walked into the house, shouting for Jennifer, who came dashing out of her bedroom, still wearing that necklace, and grabbing the phone. Hi, Uncle Bob. John tapped her on the shoulder. You take your insulin? He asked. She nodded her head, then chattering away, she walked around the house. John looked out the window across the valley to the mountains beyond. It was a beautiful, pristine spring day, and his mood began to lighten. Several of Jennifer's friends would be over soon for a small party. He'd cook up some burgers on the grill and out on the side deck. The kids would then retreat to Jennifer's room. He had just opened the pool in the backyard over the weekend, and though the water was a chilly 68, a couple of the kids might jump in. He'd flush them out around dark, go to his roundtable meeting, and maybe later this evening he'd dig back into that article he was committed to for the Civil War Journal about Lee versus Grant as a strategic commander. A no-brainer, but still an extra $500 when done, and another Vita builder for tenure review next year. He could stay up late. His first lecture wasn't until 11 in the morning tomorrow. Dad, Uncle Bob wants you. Jennifer came out of her bedroom, holding up the phone. John took it, gave her a quick peck on the top of the head, and a playful swat as she ran back off. Seconds later, the stereo in her room doubled in sound. Yeah, Bob? John, I gotta run. He could sense some tension in Bob's voice. He could hear voices in the background, shouting. It was hard to tell, though. Jennifer's stereo was blaring. Sure, Bob. Will you be down next month? Look, John, something's up. Got a problem here. The phone went dead. At that same instant, the ceiling fan began to slowly wind down. The stereo in Jennifer's room shut off, and looking over to his side alcove office, he saw the computer screen saver disappear. The green light of the on button on the 19-inch monitor disappearing. There was a chirping beep, the signal that the home security and fire alarm system was offline. Then that went silent as well. Bob? Silence on the other end. John snapped the phone shut. Power failure. Dad? It was Jennifer. My CD player died. Yeah, honey. Thank God, he thought silently. Power failure. She looked at him, a bit crestfallen, as if he were somehow responsible, or could snap his fingers to make the CD player come back on. Actually, if he could permanently arrange for that player to die, he would be tempted to do it. What about my party? Pat just gave me a CD and I wanted to play it. No worries, sweetie. Let me call the power company. Most likely a blown transformer. He picked up the landline phone. Silence. No dial tone. Last time that happened, some drunk had rammed into a telephone pole down at the bottom of the hill and wiped everything out. The drunk, of course, had walked away from it. Cell phone. John opened it back up, started to punch numbers. Nothing. Cell phone was dead. He put it down on the kitchen table. Puzzling. The battery in his phone must have gone out just as Bob clicked off. Without electricity, John couldn't charge it back up to call the power company. He looked over at Jennifer, who stared at him expectantly, as if he would now resolve things. No problem at all, kid. They'll be on it. Besides, it's a beautiful day. You don't need to be listening to that garbage anyhow. Why can't you like Mozart or Debussy, the way Pat here does? Pat looked at him uncomfortably, and he realized he had committed one of the mortal sins of parenting. Never compare your daughter to one of her buddies. Go on outside. Give the dogs a run. They'll have the power back on by dinner time. And that ends chapter 1. So if you want to find out what happens in this sleepy little North Carolina mountain town, come to the library or request a copy of 1 Second After by William Forstchen and learn about John and his family and what happens in Black Mountain, North Carolina.